The church bells were ringing as I adjusted my tie one last time. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, marrying Sophia after 5 years together. My phone buzzed. Thinking it was my best man checking in, I glanced at the screen. My heart stopped. "Brock, I cannot do this. I reject you. I am sorry." From my fiancée, just 20 minutes before our vows. In that moment, something inside me shifted from heartbreak to clarity. Before I dive into what happened next, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to quickly pivot when life throws you a curveball. I still remember the first time I saw Sophia. It was at my college friend Jake's housewarming party 3 years ago. She walked in wearing a blue sundress, her dark hair falling in waves down her shoulders, and the entire room seemed to brighten. I am typically reserved around new people, but something about her made me walk across that crowded living room and introduce myself. "I am Brock," I said, extending my hand. I have never seen someone make an entrance quite like that. She laughed a sound that would become my favorite melody. "I am Sophia, and I was not trying to make an entrance. These heels are just loud on hardwood." We talked for hours that night, long after most guests had left. She was ambitious, working at a marketing firm, but dreaming of starting her own agency someday. I admired her confidence and drive, which complemented my more methodical, steady approach to life. While I built my career as a financial analyst, carefully planning each step, she brought spontaneity and passion into my structured world. Our relationship progressed naturally. We balanced each other perfectly. I gave her stability, and she pushed me out of my comfort zone. Our friends called us the perfect couple. Jake, who had introduced us, often joked that his matchmaking skills deserved credit for what everyone could see was a match made in heaven. 2 years into our relationship, I knew she was the one. I spent weeks planning the perfect proposal, arranging for us to have dinner at Bellini's, the Italian restaurant where we had our first date. I coordinated with the staff to bring the ring with dessert. When she found it next to her tiramisu, I dropped to one knee. "Sophia, you make every day an adventure. Would you do me the incredible honor of becoming my wife?" My voice shook, slightly betraying my nerves. Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes, Brock. Of course, yes." The entire restaurant erupted in applause as she threw her arms around me. The next 9 months were filled with wedding planning. We reserved the historic St. Andrew's Church downtown, sent invitations to 175 guests, selected the perfect band, and chose a menu that would please everyone from my grandmother to her college friends. Our families contributed generously, with the total budget reaching $38,000, a significant investment in what we believed would be the perfect start to our life together. There were small tensions during planning, but nothing that seemed abnormal. Sophia wanted a larger wedding. I preferred something more intimate. She changed her mind about the color scheme twice. We had a minor disagreement about whether to invite distant relatives, but we always compromised and moved forward united, or so I thought. Looking back now, there were warning signs I completely missed. About 2 months before the wedding, Sophia began acting differently. She became more distant, often lost in thought during our conversations. She started taking phone calls in another room, conversations that would end abruptly when I entered. She canceled 3 final planning meetings with our wedding coordinator, citing work emergencies that I later discovered never happened. Then her ex-boyfriend from college, James, suddenly appeared in town. Sophia mentioned casually that he had moved back for a job opportunity, but something in her tone made me uneasy. Still, when I asked if everything was okay, she would squeeze my hand and say, "Just pre-wedding jitters, babe. Nothing to worry about." My best friend Aaron noticed the change too. One night, while we were having beers, he carefully brought it up. "Everything good with you and Sophia? She seems different lately." "Wedding stress," I replied dismissively, though a small voice inside me whispered that something was wrong. "Once we get through the ceremony, things will go back to normal." Aaron nodded but did not look convinced. "Just make sure you are taking care of yourself too, man." I wish I had listened more carefully to that small voice, to Aaron's concern, to the subtle shifts in Sophia's behavior. But I was blinded by love and the momentum of wedding plans already in motion. The morning of our wedding day dawned with perfect weather. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the hotel suite, where my groomsmen and I were getting ready. I felt excited, a few nerves mixed with anticipation. I texted Sophia at 7:30 in the morning. "Cannot wait to see you walking down that aisle." She responded almost immediately. "Cannot wait to be your wife. See you soon. Love you." That message now feels like the cruelest part of what was to come. My father helped me with my cufflinks, his eyes misty. "Son, marriage is the greatest adventure you will ever embark on," he said, straightening my bow tie. "Your mother and I are so proud of the man you have become and the partnership you and Sophia have built." We arrived at the church 2 hours before the ceremony. I greeted early guests, shook hands with elderly relatives who had traveled from across the country, and tried to stay calm as the minutes ticked by. At some point, I noticed Sophia's mother in the foyer, her face tight, with an expression I could not quite read. When she saw me, she quickly looked away. Another warning sign I failed to interpret. At 1:40 in the afternoon, exactly 20 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I was in a small anteroom off the main church, having a moment alone to collect my thoughts before the biggest commitment of my life. When I saw Sophia's name on the screen, I smiled, assuming she was sending me a last sweet message before we saw each other. Instead, the text read, "Brock, I cannot do this. I reject you. I am sorry. This is not cold feet. I have been trying to find the courage to tell you for weeks. I care about you, but I am not in love with you anymore. There is someone else. I never meant to hurt you, especially not like this. Please forgive me someday." I stared at the screen, reading and rereading the words, unable to process them. My chest tightened. The room seemed to spin. This could not be happening. Not today. Not after 5 years together and months of planning. Not 20 minutes before we were supposed to say "I do." I called her immediately. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. I texted back, "Sophia, please talk to me. Whatever it is, we can work through it." No response. Aaron found me still staring at my phone in shock. "Dude, everyone is getting seated. It is almost time." He stopped when he saw my face. What happened? I could barely form the words. "She is not coming. She just texted me that she is leaving me. Today? Right now." Aaron took my phone, read the message, and swore under his breath. "That cannot be right. Let me call Melissa." Melissa was Sophia's maid of honor and closest friend. The next few minutes were a blur. Through Aaron's conversation with Melissa, I learned the full truth. Sophia had left the bridal suite 30 minutes earlier with James, her college ex-boyfriend. They had packed her car that morning and had been planning this escape for weeks. Melissa had only learned about it that day when Sophia asked her to help sneak out of the venue without being seen. The world collapsed around me. Every future plan, every dream we had shared, disintegrated in an instant. The officiant, Pastor Williams, found us and immediately sensed something was wrong. "What has happened?" he asked. His kind face creased with concern. Aaron explained the situation as I sat motionless, still processing the magnitude of what was unfolding. The pastor placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I am so sorry, son. Should we send everyone home?" That question snapped me back to reality. 175 people waited in the church family, who had flown across the country, friends, who had taken time off work, elderly relatives, who might never travel again. My parents, who had contributed $20,000 to this day. Her parents, who must be as shocked and humiliated as I was. 2 minutes. That is how long I allowed myself to break down completely in that church office. 2 minutes of tears and anger and crushing disappointment. And then something unexpected happened inside me. A strange calm descended, a clarity I had never experienced before. I stood up, straightened my tie, and looked at Pastor Williams. "Slight change of plans," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to address everyone." Aaron looked concerned. "Are you sure? We can just have the pastor announce a postponement. You do not have to face everyone right now." "I do," I said. "I owe them that much. And I owe myself dignity in this moment." I quickly consulted with my parents, who had been called into the room. My mother was crying. My father looked like he wanted to hunt down Sophia and her new boyfriend. I explained what I wanted to do. They were hesitant, but supportive. "Whatever you need to do, son." "We are right behind you," my father said. Walking alone toward the altar where I had expected to stand with my bride was the longest walk of my life. The church was full. The string quartet was playing softly, and confused whispers rippled through the crowd as people noticed the absence of any bridal procession. I could feel 175 pairs of eyes on me, questioning, pitying, concerned. I reached the microphone that had been set up for our vows. "Good afternoon, everyone." I began, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "Thank you all for coming today to what was supposed to be the celebration of my marriage to Sophia." The room went completely silent. I have just received a text message from Sophia informing me that she will not be joining us today. She has decided to end our relationship. I paused, letting the gasps and murmurs subside. She has left with someone else. The silence that followed was deafening. I saw shock on some faces, tears on others. Sophia's father stood up abruptly and then sat back down, his face ashen. My grandmother crossed herself. My college roommate shook his head in disbelief. "I know this is shocking news. It is for me too. But here is what I have decided." I took a deep breath. "You have all traveled to be here. Food has been prepared. Music has been arranged. So rather than sending everyone home to sit alone with this sad news, I would like to invite you all to stay not for a wedding but for a celebration of dodging a bullet and new beginnings." For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then my father stood up. "My son has shown more courage and grace today than most people show in a lifetime. I, for one, would be honored to stay and support him." He raised his voice. "The open bar will start immediately, instead of after the ceremony." That broke the tension. A ripple of uncertain laughter spread through the church. People began to stand to move to approach me with hugs and words of support. I asked the string quartet to switch to something more upbeat. Aaron organized a few friends to quickly remove the more wedding-specific decorations from the reception hall. What happened next was entirely unexpected. As the initial shock wore off, something remarkable began to take shape. The carefully planned wedding reception transformed into something more authentic and meaningful than I could have imagined. The transition from wedding ceremony to dodging a bullet celebration was awkward at first. People did not know whether to offer congratulations or condolences. But as the initial shock wore off and the open bar worked its magic, something remarkable happened. Genuine laughter began to emerge. The forced formality of a wedding reception dissolved into something more authentic. My college friends formed a protective circle around me, keeping me supplied with drinks and deflecting any uncomfortable questions. An older cousin I had always admired pulled me aside. "When my first fiancée left me, I thought my life was over," he confided. 3 years later, I met my current wife, and I thank God every day that the first wedding never happened." Others shared similar stories of resilience relationships that ended painfully but ultimately led to better paths. I had never realized how common my experience was, how many people had faced similar rejections and not only survived but thrived afterward. The DJ, after a brief consultation with Aaron, abandoned the carefully curated wedding playlist and played upbeat music that got people dancing. My grandmother, 86 years old, insisted on dancing with me where the first dance with my bride would have been. "Her loss, my sweet boy," she whispered in my ear. "You were always too good for her." As the night progressed, I found myself genuinely enjoying the company of friends and family who had rallied around me in this unexpected way. The scheduled toasts became something entirely different. Not celebrations of a union, but messages of new beginnings and resilience. Aaron took the microphone around 9 o'clock. "I have known Brock since freshman year of college. He is the most loyal, genuine person I know. Today has not gone as planned, but I have never been prouder to call him my friend. To Brock, who showed us all today what real strength looks like." I raised my glass to the crowd that had shown up for a wedding and stayed for something much more meaningful. Thank you all for turning what could have been the worst day of my life into a powerful reminder of what really matters. I lost a fiancé today, but I am reminded that I have not lost what truly counts: the love of friends and family who show up when it matters most. By the end of the night, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. The band played until midnight, and when it was finally time to leave, My groomsmen insisted I not spend the night alone. We went to the cabin I had rented for what was supposed to be the first night of my honeymoon. 6 guys crammed into a romantic getaway meant for 2 ordering pizza and drinking bourbon until the early morning hours. Throughout the evening and into the next day, my phone lit up with messages, not just of sympathy, but with information that painted a clearer picture of what had happened. Mutual friends feeling I deserved to know the truth revealed that Sophia had been seeing James secretly for 4 months. Their affair had begun when he first moved back to town, supposedly for a job opportunity. The work emergencies that had caused her to miss wedding planning meetings had actually been afternoons spent with him. The most shocking revelation came from our shared friend Danielle, who texted, "You should check your joint account." Sophia withdrew $5,000 yesterday morning. Sure enough, when I logged in, I discovered the withdrawal money we had been saving for our honeymoon in Hawaii. That was when the full extent of Sophia's betrayal truly hit me. This had not been a last-minute decision or cold feet. This had been calculated, planned, and executed with complete disregard for me or anyone else affected. When I finally returned to our apartment the following afternoon, I found it half empty. She had clearly been packing gradually over weeks, taking small amounts of her possessions, so I would not notice. Her favorite books were gone from the shelves. The expensive blender her parents had given us as an engagement present had vanished. The closet was half empty, with only clothes she rarely wore remaining on her side. The pain was sharp but different now. Less about heartbreak, and more about the shock of such complete deception from someone I thought I knew intimately. How had I missed the signs? How had I been so completely fooled by someone I had planned to spend my life with? But the most surprising twist in this story was yet to come. Exactly 36 hours after Sophia's dramatic exit, my phone buzzed with a text from her. "Brock, can we talk? I made a terrible mistake." I did not respond. 12 hours later, "Please answer. I need to explain. Things are not what they seemed." Again, I did not engage. By the 72-hour mark after our non-wedding, the frequency and desperation of her attempts to contact me increased dramatically. She called 14 times in one day. She sent over 30 text messages ranging from apologetic to angry to pleading. She even showed up at my office, causing a scene in the lobby until security escorted her out. From mutual friends, I learned what had happened. James's supposed job opportunity had fallen through, if it had ever existed at all. The apartment they had planned to move into had already been rented to someone else when they arrived to sign the lease. Her romantic escape fantasy had collided with harsh reality within 48 hours. The most revealing detail came from her roommate from college, who called me directly. James got cold feet once the excitement of the affair wore off. When she showed up with all her stuff and the reality of what they had done hit him, he freaked out. They had a huge fight. He told her he was not ready to jump from an affair to playing house and suggested they slow things down. Her parents, understandably humiliated by their daughter's actions, had refused to take her calls or offer financial support. Her friends, many of whom had been at the wedding-turned-celebration, were equally unreceptive to her pleas for help. She had burned bridges in spectacular fashion and now found herself alone, with nowhere to live, no relationship, and the full consequences of her choices bearing down on her. The final confrontation came when she showed up at my apartment with her mother in tow. Her mother, who looked like she had aged 10 years in 3 days, had finally responded to her desperate calls. They stood outside my door, Sophia, in tears, and her mother looking both embarrassed and determined. "Brock, please," Sophia pleaded when I opened the door. "Just give me 5 minutes. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I was scared, confused. James manipulated me. I still love you. We can still fix this." Her mother stepped forward. "We are mortified by what happened, Brock, but everyone makes mistakes. If there is any way you could find it in your heart to talk this through." I stood in the doorway, surprisingly calm. "Mrs. Thompson, I respect you coming here. But this was not a mistake. It was a series of deliberate choices over months. I deserve better than that. Sophia deserves someone she truly wants to be with. There is nothing to discuss. I closed the door gently, but firmly, hearing Sophia's sobs from the hallway. That moment, choosing self-respect over the relationship that had defined my adult life, was perhaps the most defining moment of my life so far. The next morning, I texted Sophia, asking to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I felt I owed both of us a proper calm conversation to achieve real closure. When she arrived, her eyes were red and puffy from crying, but there was also a flash of hope on her face that made what I needed to say even more difficult. "Thank you for meeting me," I began, keeping my voice steady. "I wanted us to talk face to face, not through texts or with your mother present." "Does this mean there is a chance?" she started, but I gently cut her off. "No, Sophia, there is not. I did not ask you here to reconcile. I asked you here because 5 years together deserves a better ending than a text message and blocked numbers." I explained without anger or desire for vengeance exactly how her actions had affected me. How the betrayal was not just about leaving me at the altar, but about the months of deception that preceded it, the planning behind my back, the $5,000 taken from our joint account, the calculated way she had packed her belongings gradually so I would not notice. "Trust is like glass," I told her. "Once shattered, you can try to piece it back together, but it will never be as strong and will always show the cracks. What you did was not a single mistake in a moment of panic. It was hundreds of choices over months that showed a fundamental disrespect for me and our relationship." I returned the small box of her remaining possessions I had brought with me, including the engagement ring she had left behind. "I wish you well, Sophia, I really do. But our chapter is closed." She cried quietly as I spoke, nodding occasionally in understanding. "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness," she finally said. "But I want you to know I will always regret what I did. Not just because it backfired, but because I hurt someone who never would have hurt me that way." We parted without drama, and that conversation marked the true end of our relationship, not the chaotic text message before our wedding, but this quiet, dignified goodbye in a coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon. The weeks that followed were not easy. There were difficult nights when the silence in my apartment felt oppressive, moments when a song or smell would trigger memories of happier times. But there was also a steady progression toward healing that surprised me with its momentum. I threw myself into work, earning a promotion I had been working toward for months. I reconnected with friends I had somewhat neglected during the intensity of wedding planning. I started playing basketball again on Wednesday nights, something I had given up, because Sophia complained about the late games. My parents suggested I talk to someone professional about the experience, and I surprised myself by agreeing readily. The therapist helped me understand that while Sophia's actions were inexcusable, there had been warning signs in our relationship that I had chosen to ignore. She helped me see that real love should not require diminishing yourself or constantly walking on eggshells. 4 months after the wedding that never was, I noticed something had shifted. I went entire days without thinking about Sophia. I laughed without feeling like it was an act. I started to recognize that losing her was not the catastrophe it had seemed. Initially, it was the universe, course-correcting before I made a much more painful mistake. The experience changed me in ways I never could have predicted. I became more insightful about relationships, more attuned to authenticity in myself and others. My friendship with Aaron deepened through the crucible of that crisis. My relationship with my parents, always good, became something more profound, a true adult connection built on shared experience of adversity. Professionally, the focus I brought to my work after the breakup resulted in the kind of recognition I had been seeking for years. 6 months after the non-wedding, I was offered a leadership role that would have been impossible to accept if I had been honeymooning and settling into married life. Perhaps most surprisingly, I found myself grateful in an odd way for how things had unfolded. If Sophia had gone through with the wedding while harboring doubts and seeing someone else, our inevitable divorce would have been far more complicated and painful. If she had confessed weeks earlier, I might have tried to convince her to stay, potentially trapping us both in a relationship that was fundamentally broken. The most profound lesson I took from the experience was that rejection is often protection. Someone walking away from you, even in a hurtful, cowardly way, is sometimes the universe steering you away from a path that would not have served your highest good. I also learned that how we respond to betrayal defines us far more than the betrayal itself. I could have responded with public vengeance, with bitter recrimination, with a campaign to destroy Sophia's reputation. The momentary satisfaction would have poisoned my own heart far more than hers. Choosing dignity over drama was the gift I gave myself on what should have been my wedding day. As I approach the one-year anniversary of that fateful text message, I find myself in a place I never could have imagined in those first raw moments of pain. I am dating again cautiously, but optimistically. I am more clear about what I want and need in a partnership. I am listening to my intuition when it whispers that something is off. I do not regret the 5 years I spent with Sophia. They were for the most part happy years that helped shape the man I am today. I do not even regret the pain of her leaving, as it forged in me a resilience and self-knowledge I might never have developed otherwise. There is a strange freedom in having your worst fear come true and discovering it was survivable. After being left at the altar, most other setbacks seem manageable by comparison. I have found that courage is not about avoiding difficult situations, but about facing them with an open heart and the knowledge that you can handle whatever comes next. The wedding day that was not became in its own way the first day of a more authentic life, and for that unexpected gift, I have found a way to be thankful. Have you ever had a moment when something that felt like the worst day of your life turned out to be the beginning of something better? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and growth. Your support means the world to me, and it helps others find these stories who might need them too. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the paths that close before us make way for the journeys we were meant to take all along.